Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garret Price.
How's it going?
And this is the last Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast of the 2024 season. I was gone last week. I was sick. I was actually sick all the way up until like yesterday. Like I still didn't feel I started coming out of it yesterday, so that kind of sucked. But I'm glad. I feel good today. That's the most important part because we get ready for the holidays here. So missed a giveaway. I am going to do the two giveaways. I'm going to do one on this show at the end of the show. So stay tuned. We'll have to review on the podcast and the app. I'm going to do a giveaway. Read off the names. If you won, we're going to send you a shirt or a hat or whatever you want from the Nerd Store. And then we'll do one tomorrow's show. And since I missed last week's show, I'm going to kick off the new year with a giveaway too, as long as I remember.
Nice.
It's a couple of weeks away. So at the end of that show, we're going to do that. If you read the title of this show, we did it's a fun way we like to end the year is just do a startup mock draft to see kind of like, okay, we're going in the championship week. Hopefully a lot of you out there are listening, are getting ready to go get a ship, right? To go get that title.
Yeah.
I think when it's all said and done right now, I'm guaranteed to play for 5. And
nice.
I've got 4 more I have a chance at. I really need Jayden Reed to go off tonight. If Jayden Reed goes off, I'll probably play for 9 championships and 25 leagues. So
would be amazing.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. So we'll see how this cookie crumbles. In my most coveted league, Matt and I's 21-year-old league, I came up short against last year's champ. Matt, however, will be going for his 4th championship. He is going to pull away with a big win. So congrats to Matt facing Dynasty Nerd Mike, who he started the year off. He's going to be facing Dynasty Nerd Mike for the championship, and I'm bitter about that. So
3 out of the 4 guys were Dynasty Nerds contributors at one point. Coincidence? I think not.
I think not. Who are you? Oh, you played Marboski. That's never mind.
Yeah. Yep. Big Mike.
J-Wack and I are going to be facing off in a championship in one of our leagues. So that'll be fun.
Nice. Yes.
Oh, that's always fun.
Bragging rights on the line for sure.
Because I eliminated him in a league this week, and I was like, oh, we're facing off in the finals. And the other one is like, good. I need my revenge.
Revenge games are fun, man. I almost pulled a great turnaround in that league I've talked about forever. I know I only mentioned this on the Nerd Herd show where I was intoxicated during a startup draft. I've complained it was my worst startup draft ever. Baker Mayfield's touchdown last night with 2 minutes left put Danny Kelly ahead by 5 points, and he supplanted me there. So that was I almost felt good. I was like, man, I have a chance. And I was like, I looked at other teams, like, I could win this league if I win this game. Like, I felt really good. Yeah. It's the only reason I stayed up late too. Is like, I want to see if I win this game versus Danny Kelly. Like, I want to see if I get out here. And then of course Baker throws that touchdown in the end. I was like, that's typical Rich Dotson for you. Lose in the end.
How about the irony where Baker Mayfield was one of your first picks, and then he's the one to eliminate you?
It rips your heart out, man. Yeah. That's rough.
Yeah, iron out the irony. So excited. Makes me feel so happy. I always talk to my wife. She gets like, what is it with you in the playoffs? I was like, you don't understand like what happens to me in the playoffs. Like if it can happen, like it's gonna happen. Like, you know, if Alvin Kamara is gonna score 6 touchdowns, it's gonna be versus me in a championship game. If Jonathan Taylor is gonna go off for 200 yards, it's gonna be versus me in the trust me, I'm facing that player. Like whoever it is, like I'm facing that player. Like even in our original league, I was like, okay, man, like I can win this league as long as Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry don't have big games. Like I'll win this game. Like I feel really good about it, you know. And it was Saturday. As soon as Saturday hit, I texted Dynasty and Mike. I was like, well, congrats. He's like, it's not over until it's over. And I just sent him a picture of a fat lady singing. I was like, it's over, buddy. And he's like, nope, not till the clock says 0. I was like, dude, good luck versus whoever you play. It's probably gonna be versus Matt, man. So it's that time of the year, but you know that's the difference. It come down to a touchdown, a not scored touchdown because Jonathan Taylor drops the ball at the goal line. Like it's the little things that matter. It's what makes it fun. I love seeing all the comments in my league chats where we're tapping other people too, and they're like, "Why do I even play this game?" You know, like this is why you play the game. The exhilaration of that. When you're watching a game, you know, like that feeling of it, you know, that dopamine. Sweat. The sweat of like, you know, like I'm sure it's the same thing when you're gambling football at high stakes, but you're like, just for that title. And you're like, okay, man, this is it. I need Jayden Reed to catch one more ball. And usually for me, what happens is he goes to catch it and he's pushed out of bounds, or it's a pass interference call, or, George Kittle standing there right there at the end of the game, wide open. It gets tipped by the lineman like last night's game, and it goes out of his hands.
Flag holding. Called it back. Flag holding.
Yeah, it's like, oh, so the exhilaration. And the opposite end, when he does catch that pass, his time expires, right? Or like, it's like, or last night, like the Jayden Reed deep touchdown pass, the Terry McLaurin to put you over the edge for a big game. Like, those exhilarating moments are why we play. Like, it all builds up. All this work that we do all year long builds up to those little moments, right? Because you don't get those moments during the regular season. It's when it's all on the line to get into the playoffs, to win your championship game, and the edge of your seats of just rooting for this one player's success or his failure. Like, okay, don't let Jayden Reed catch this football. Don't let Jayden Reed catch this football. And Jayden Reed with a catch for 8 yards, or even here's a super burn, right? Like, okay, I'm up by 1 point. Jayden Reed with this screen for no yards, 1 catch for no yards. Like, you mother son of a beeswax. Like, So that's why we love the game, though. This is why we're here. This is why we do it 365 days a year. And it's why we work so hard, right? And where does it start? It all starts here with your startup draft, right? Like, when you're on the clock, rankings are one thing, but when you're on the clock, you're choosing between player A and player B. Like, you have to make a decision, right? Like, who am I drafting? You're putting your stones to the fire. So this is where it starts, and this is how we get to the end of the year. And as soon as we come back, we're going to do our reward show. Maybe we'll cover a little bit of our hot takes, and then we're going to do a way too early rookie mock draft, because then that's where it resets. After the startup draft, how do you build your team? It's through those rookie drafts. So we did a startup mock draft on Sleeper. Me, myself, Matt, me.
You had 2 teams.
Garrett. That was it, right? Like, Jared was in that league, right?
It was just the 3 of us. Yep, against the Nerd Herd.
Against the Nerd Herd. So, Superflex tight end premium league. We're gonna kind of go through this mock draft, kind of talk about what we think about these picks, where some value was. I will say, as we get into this, some of this might be slightly askew because, like, Sleeper's like ADP was wonky, so there was no ADP.
There was no ADP. Period.
So
it wasn't wonky. It was non-existent.
It was off.
It was non-existent. So, like, you literally had to go in and find the guy that you wanted. Like, there was no like, oh this guy's Cooper Kupp's
felt
available.
old school. It felt old school. Do you remember, like, going to like in-person drafts and everybody has a different list? Like, some guy got it from Yahoo, some guy got it from ESPN, some guy made his own. Like, everybody had a slightly different one. Like, that's kind of what this felt like.
But it was even harder because there was nothing to scratch off. Like, there was no, like,
it's true.
Unless you had a list of players, which I did not, because we were doing this yesterday while watching football, and had not scratching people off. Like, you still, like, you were just out there going, okay, who's kind of available? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
At one point, like, I saw the first name that looked recognizable, like, in the late rounds. I just drafted him. It was like Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm like, yeah, I like Wan'Dale Robinson.
That sounds right.
And then another player goes right behind him. I'm like, oh, I would take him ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson.
Dang it.
But then, when you're around 15, 16, like, the core of your draft is in those first 8 rounds, right? Like, that's where you're going to really build the foundation of your team. So let's start off with, like, what picks we had. And here's another thing I didn't know. I didn't know it was 3rd round reversal, so that might have affected my draft pick slightly too. I did not know it was 3rd round reversal because I was going to take Devon Achane. But God, Devon Achane or Breece Hall will be there when I come back, like right here in this couple pick. Like, he's not going running. I had one pick 1 too. So I was like, one of those guys will for sure be there when I come back. And it really did change the whole dynamic of my draft by not knowing that, because I didn't end up getting running back until way later. If I'd known it would have been third round reversal, I would have taken Devon Achane at 1-2. So Matt's computer just crashed. I'll be back here momentarily. I had 1-2. Matt was at 1-6. And Garrett, where were you drafting?
I was at 110. So we spread out pretty nicely overall. We got the front of the draft, middle, and back.
Do you have a preference? Like, do you prefer the back or the front of a startup draft?
It depends on the year, like, and where the players are at. Like, last year, like I wanted either like one of the first 3 picks or I wanted towards the back. Like I didn't want to be stuck in the middle somewhere. Right now, especially because how I have started valuing the young running backs a little bit differently than I think other fantasy people, I really do like that back of the draft now, because that's kind of the area where I feel like I can get one of those, make sure I get one of those elite guys.
Yeah, you're a back end, backdoor kind of guy. I understand that. I respect it. Let's get it where the it's good. It's too short, would say. So I'm the same way. Like I want to be in that like top 3, or I just rather be at the back end and double down, because like once you get, because I do feel like once you get out of that top 3, like okay, we have a big, like I'm good with a lot of people. So like there's a clear top tier for me. Like when I look at the top end, like it's Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, and I'm already prepared. I was talking to Matt about this before the show. Like I'm literally already prepared to put Brock Bowers in that 3rd spot. So like for me, like that, I really do like look at like clear difference makers with Jayden Daniels and what he's done his rookie year and his age. That's a clear cornerstone piece. And that's not saying anybody else isn't. Like obviously these first 2 rounds are littered with players, but like that's a tier for me. So like once you get out of that, there's no difference between me to having, like Justin Herbert or, Jordan Love, right? Like, but there's a clear difference between me having Justin Herbert, I feel like, in Jayden Daniels, right? Because of that Russian upside. So for me, it's top 3 or it's the back end. Matt, I know you weren't here for this. So you picked at 6. How do you feel about like drafting in the middle compared to the beginning or the end of the draft? Do you like the ebbs and flows of just being like, it's very consistent in your picks, like you're right there in the middle of it?
I mean, I'm a little torn on that, right? You guys, I was the last one in out of the 3 of us, and you guys had picked both ends, so I wasn't also going to pick an end. I just went to the middle. I don't necessarily love it or anything like that, because I do feel like, you miss out on that top end stuff, obviously, and then you can't kind of double up when you're in the middle. So I took that, and then as soon as I did, I was like, you know what, I'm going to kind of formulate a different approach here, and I'm going to go a little wonky and see what my team can end up if I go a certain route. I don't know if we're already talking about who we picked in the first round or not, but
not yet,
not quite yet.
Okay. So I don't necessarily love it, to be honest, because I feel like you're kind of always waiting and you're getting sniped a lot and you're not doing a lot of sniping.
Sure.
You're kind of just sitting back and waiting for a guy and hoping a lot. While if you're at one of the 2 ends, you at least get to double up. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to take this guy now if you're at an end, and then this other guy, because there's no way he's coming back to me. Even if you're reaching a little bit, I still feel okay doing that. And I feel like in the middle, it's just kind of like, oh man, I got sniped by like 8. I guess I'll take this guy here. He seems like value.
I will say
that's how I feel in the middle anyway.
I will say I loved your first round pick. I was really curious where he was going to go, and I was prepared to take him at 10 had he fallen that far, but I didn't think he was going to. And sure enough, you took him at 6, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, and I love that too, because if you use a Dynasty GM, we have the mock draft tool in there, and it's based off of like the 3 of ours, basically our rankings. It's been a big part of that algorithm there. So this player does go right around this range in a startup mock draft on our mock draft tool. And that's why I like our Dynasty GM mock draft tool over like anybody else's mock draft tool out there, because I feel like it's way more accurate in the picks. Like you can't go out there and use Fantasy Pros. Shout out to Fantasy Pros, are a great regular season site, but like if you try to do a startup mock draft on their app, like it's not realistic whatsoever, right? And that's like
not skewed for Dynasty, right? I mean, it's skewed for
Correct.
redraft. So that's the purpose of why theirs isn't as accurate for Dynasty.
So, and then before we get into our picks here, then too, 3rd round reversal. I saw, Garrett, that you made this a 3rd round reversal. Totally understand the fairness of 3rd round reversal. I'll say this: I have no pros or against 3rd round reversal, but I will say if I know the draft is a 3rd round reversal draft, I 100% want to have pick 10 through 12, like right in that range. Like,
okay,
yeah, if I know it's 3rd round reversal, I want to be there or that back end, because I'm getting 3 players that I really like, right? Like you're getting 3 essentially of the top 25 players, 26 players. And that's a pretty good number to be at.
Yeah, I like 3rd round reversals. I do think it kind of helps the balance of power a little bit in it, because getting yeah, you get the one and then you got to wait for a while, but then you're getting two really good players at the turn there of 2 and 3, and you're waiting forever on the other end. So I do kind of like that. I think it's the most fair, but I thought about this because I feel like every time the three of us do a draft together, we do a good job of spreading out. We should do a mock draft sometime where we have to pick back to back to back. Like, I feel like that would be a fun one to talk about, like if we sniped each other or not and that kind of stuff. So I think that'd be fun.
All right, next time, yeah, we'll do that. We'll get him in there, or at least do something where it's like we'll get Jared in there and like two of us at the front, two of us at the back, and kind of like right next to each other, see who gets sniped. So let's get to the mock draft, shall we, boys? Let's open the doors as we close the doors on 2024. So
look at that word
fun
play.
year overall. So with the 1-1, it's a clear 1-1. It's Josh Allen went 1-1. I had the 1-2. I took Jayden Daniels here. Again, a very easy pick to me. There's not another player that, and obviously yesterday's game was another, like staple.
Feather in the cap.
Yeah, what's to come, right? Like for Jayden Daniels, to the point of like, if you wanted to get those 7 years of difference, if you took Jayden Daniels 1-1, I wouldn't be like, oh, what are you doing there? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there? Like, he's essentially worth the 1-1. This is a player that's going to get significantly better and have, better weapons put around him. Wait till they get like a really good stud running back in that offense. They put another good receiver outside of Terry McLaurin out there because he's making everybody else look great out there. He's already elevated the offense around him and shown what he could do with a true star receiver, because Terry McLaurin is an upper echelon receiver. Is he an elite tier 1 receiver? No, but he's a very good professional receiver. So imagine Jayden Daniels with a Jamar Chase, a CeeDee Lamb, even like a Malik Neighbors, right? Like, so to get him another weapon along those lines, look what he's doing, like Olamide Zacchaeus, you know what I mean? Like things along those lines, Jameson Crowders, Zach Ertz, right? What he's going to be able to do in a very long career. So I'm very happy. It's the reason I picked the 2 slot, honestly, is because I wanted to start my franchise with Jayden Daniels. And that's why it goes back, Matt, you were here before. Like, if I don't have the first, second, or third pick, like I'd much rather just go ahead and go to the back end because it's just a big smorgasbord of guys that I love, right? And the reason I said 3 bad is because I've already moved Brock Bowers up to like that difference maker. Like he's a 1-of-1 kind of guy. So like once I miss out, if I had a third pick, I would honestly take a super flex tight end premium draft. I would take Brock Bowers 3rd overall ahead of those quarterbacks, because even with those quarterbacks, I'm just as happy getting another guy down the road, or even like then moving back up into the top end of the second round to grab my guy. So I took Jayden Daniels at 3, and then went Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Was a little surprised to see Pat Mahomes go that high at 1-5, a little honestly, but he went 1-5, never a bad pick, about as safe as it gets. And then Matt, you're on the clock at 1-6, and you broke that quarterback tier. How did you? You took the first non-quarterback off the board. Who did you go with?
I know. So I ended up going with Brock Bowers. Obviously we were kind of alluding to it and dancing around that for a while, but I ended up going Brock Bowers. And I do think, he's like you were mentioning it. He's a difference maker, a big time difference maker at a premium position here. This is a tight end premium draft. So I think that pushes him up. He's over 1,000 yards. He's in his rookie season. He's got 1,067 yards, 101 receptions already. So, I mean, this offense is going to be built kind of through him, I believe, going forward. So I just wanted to see, if I take a tight end at number 6, how does that kind of flush out for the rest of my draft? And we're going to see how it kind of works going forward. But I felt like he was a difference maker, and I had to go with him. And I'm happy as a pig in poo, so to speak, to get him.
Those pigs sure love poo.
They sure do.
So we always do super flex tight end premium mock drafts. Not always. We throw a 1 QB in there because the people need it. Later in the year, we'll do this again after the rookies go, when the actual NFL rookies get drafted. In the NFL
changes everything.
In the summertime, we do another mock draft. We'll make that one QB to offset the end of the year super flex. If this is 1 QB, right, non-tight end premium PPR, do you think Brock Bowers is still worth 1.6, or do you think he's still even worth higher?
I think if it's 1 QB and it's not tight end premium, just a regular league,
Correct.
I still think he's such a big
Mhm.
difference maker that he might even go up higher. I mean, if you're getting 1,000 yards or close to it out of your tight end position, and everyone else is getting 500, 600 yards, that is still such a big difference at a position that you're able to slide basically a wide receiver one, a low end wide receiver one into your tight end position. That's cheating. You're cheating. So he's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel the same way. Where everybody else is, you start to get somewhat interchangeable. Like we got into this before. Like, if you get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, like you're happy either way. Even if you throw in like, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, like there's like 4 or 5 guys that you feel really good about, like as your first round pick. If you get Bijan, like you feel really good about it. If you get Devon Achane and Breece Hall or Jahmyr Gibbs, you still feel pretty good about that. But there's only one guy that you feel like, wow, I own this position today, right? This is how it is today, and that's Brock Bowers. So I agree. Like I don't think there's any pick that can go high enough for Brock Bowers. That would make me go, I might go raise an eyebrow. Brock Bowers in a Superflex League went 1-1. But like I would understand it. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a bad pick, man. What are you doing? You start 2 quarterbacks. I'm like, I get it. Yeah, you want the one of one.
You want the guy.
Right? Like you want the baseball card that's 3 of 5, or do you want that card that's 1 of 1? Which holds the most value, right? Like and that is quantity, supply and demand. It's what this nation's built on top of. It's capitalism at its fullest, right? Like supply and demand. Right now, we live in a dynasty world where there's only one Brock Bowers that's giving you that kind of production.
Yep.
And we've seen it come and go a little bit. We've seen Travis Kelce hit those numbers. We saw Kyle Pitts do it his rookie year, and then all of a sudden he's just dropping footballs that are running the money from Michael Penix. And without that though, he's a unicorn. He's one of the only unicorns right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football, so can't go high enough, Matt. That was a fantastic pick. Like I said, I would take him as high as 3. So, and it's one of those reasons, like the only reason I wouldn't want to be at the back end of a draft is because, like, oh, I'm not getting Brock Bowers.
There's at least a chance. I feel like, I made that pick at 6, and a bunch of the people behind me were all bummed, and they were commenting about how they thought they were going to get him and stuff, and so I got him at 6, and I have a feeling that the more people that do mock drafts and the more people that see him go at 6 and are disappointed at 7, 8, and 9, the earlier he's going to start going in real drafts because people don't want to miss out for real. So his ADP might just kind of keep creeping up, and you said 3, and it that's probably a little high for most, but I could see his ADP creeping up closer to 4 or 5 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Brock Bowers and Caleb Williams than Jalen Hurts and Sam Laporta. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way I look at it.
Sure.
So,
all right. So
Matt took Brock Bowers at 1-6. 1-7 went Jamar Chase. 1-8 went Joe Burrow. 1-9 went Jordan Love. And then, Garrett, you're on the clock at 1-10.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier, but I am much more apt, especially after the show we did this summer, kind of looking at those running backs and the difference between those young elite guys and everybody else. And it really affected how I play. It affected how I drafted this offseason. And honestly, this has been one of my most successful years because I've traded for a lot of these guys or drafted a lot of these guys. And it's really been a big benefit to my team. And I think it will continue to be for years. So I ended up going with Bijan Robinson at 110. I took the first running back off the board. And look, there were tons of tempting players here. Honestly, all 4 of the players that went right after Bijan Robinson were all guys that I considered with this pick. But at the end of the day, we're talking about Brock Bowers and the difference making that he has at that position. Bijan Robinson's not far off with his age, the amount of continuous just 20-point game after 20-point game after 20-point game after 20. Like, he has just been so good. He's got this offense. He's really the lead. Even though Algiers involved to some extent, he's clearly the lead back. They're usually using him on the goal line, using him in passing work. Like, he is their guy. And especially with how encouraged I was by watching Michael Penix yesterday. If you just look at the box score, you won't know. But if you watched a lot of the game, Penix looked really freaking good in that game. And so that only gave me more confidence in him for the future and that offense for the future. So for me, As tempting as a lot of these other guys were, a lot of these receivers, a lot of these quarterbacks, I couldn't pass up on that elite young RB.
Oh, 100%, dude. When you have a guy like Bijan Robinson, it's like being in 1994 standing under a mistletoe at the Playboy Mansion. Like, you're just smiling all day long. Like, you're in a really good spot, right? Like, you're just like, hey man, this is gonna be a good night. Like, look at me. So you're right. You're getting a guy that, because outside those running backs like Bijan, and you could almost say right now Bijan like is, as we exit the 2024 season as we are now, like going into the year, like when the year started, I had Breece Hall as my running back 1 overall, my dynasty running back 1 overall. That's pivoted. Breece Hall is now, I think, running back 3 or 4. I have Devon Achane ahead of him, and then he's like equal to Gibbs right there. Like Bijan's probably in a class almost by himself. Like if you have Bijan, you're like, you feel clearly I had the best dynasty running back today, right? And by today I mean 2 days before Christmas in 2024 season. It's a constant, the ebbs and flow of dynasty. Things change drastically, right? Like one injury, couple breakout games, it changed the dynamics of dynasty pretty quickly. But Bijan right now could be crowned what he was during his rookie process, right? Of like, hey, this guy's the 1-on-1. It's kind of why you don't want to just go ahead and sweep Marvin Harrison Jr. just under the rug so quickly, because his rookie year wasn't so dominant, right? Like not everything is just an instant scratch off winner, right? Like, oh, look, I won $1 million. Sometimes it's like, oh, $500, $500, $5, $5, $3. And then that last one, he starts with a 5 and you're like, could this be it? It's got to be a little bit of patience here. So Bijan went 110. Garrett, you mentioned what went after that? What could you back to your second pick here?
Yeah, and like I said, all 4 of the players that went next were all guys that I consider. Justin Herbert went at 111, which I think is a good pick. He's been playing really well lately.
Way too late for Justin Herbert.
Justin Jefferson, this is the latest I've seen Jay Jettas go in a long time. And that was the one that was the hardest to pass up on, honestly. Just with how good he is consistently, still a very young receiver, seems to be pretty much quarterback proof. Like, he was that was the one that really got me questioning whether I should or shouldn't. But he goes at 112. And then the team at the end there, they doubled up at receiver, got CeeDee Lamb, another guy who's showing to be quarterback proof, just getting it done. And then Amon-Ra went, and Amon-Ra, just another guy that just puts up like 19 points, 18 points, 27 points, 15 points, 19. Like, he's just so consistently good each and every week. So all 4 of those picks I thought were fantastic. I would have loved any of those picks to have fallen to me at 2-3, but none of them did. And at this point, I was tempted to say, do I go running back? It's a really tough thing to do in a dynasty league with how easily accessible some of the older running backs are and stuff like that. I just couldn't bring myself to go running back again here. And there was a young quarterback that I've been in love with through the entire process, and he's only continued to give me more reasons to fall in love with him, and that's Drake Maye. So I took Drake Maye at 2-3, maybe a tad bit on the risky side. We know rookie quarterbacks, there's risk involved. He's a younger player, but you could argue that he has the worst pieces around him out of any offense in the NFL. If it's not the worst, it's top 5. Like, he does not have a lot of good pieces in that offense. Yet week after week, he makes plays. He makes some of those like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type plays where you're like, how did that happen? And he just does it. It's a team that has some cap room, has some draft assets. This offense should get better, and it's going to only continue to elevate because how Drake Maye is making everyone around him better. So I wanted to get that solid young QB, and I took him at 2-3.
Yeah, you just can't pass up the opportunity of sometimes, definitely when the quarterbacks have made a run, right? Like in the first round, we saw every pick was a quarterback before. So 75% of the picks was quarterbacks, and they're going to give you 8 guys off the board. So it starts to get pretty slim real quick. And you don't know what that situation is going to look at after you get back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was terrified to figure out what, and I feel like we start to enter a different tier at this point too. And so he was one of the last few in kind of a tier for me where I felt like I'd be dropping tiers with the next quarterbacks available.
and the ceiling's so high, and with the averaging about 60 yards rushing per game and being 22 years old, you at least get like a nice safe floor of a player, right? Like his window is so large because they know that situation's so bad. He's looked so good already. Like he's got a long ways to go before you have any worries whatsoever of him now playing quarterback in the NFL. And to be fair, this entire rookie class so far has been fantastic. Awesome. It looks like it's going to be one of those classes where we look back in 10 years going, wow, that's one of the best quarterback classes we've ever seen. Like, because they all come out. I mean, you mentioned Michael Penix has looked really good. The only one that we have not seen so far is J.J. McCarthy. And with the history of Kevin O'Connell in that offense, I mean, look what he's done with Sam Darnold, what he did last year. So with Nick Mullins, like the sky seems to be a limit with another who will only be 22 years old in J.J. McCarthy. So I love the pick there. That's in the range, Garrett. I think I would be very interested in taking him as well. If somebody else went Caleb Williams there, I would understand that. The only other even receiver that I'm kind of considering there would be like Malik Neighbors would be the only one I would consider there.
Sure.
If I want to grab, if you went running back, okay, I want to start off with like a core running back and a core receiver. And that's the way I want to go. And then I'll figure out quarterback. That's the only guy I kind of see taken there over a guy like Drake Maye. But again, that's a really good start. You have two young, valuable cornerstone pieces. And then you get back to Matt, it went Jahmyr Gibbs, J.J. McCarthy, then Malik Neighbors. And then Matt, you're back on the clock here.
Real quick, before Matt goes, the J.J. McCarthy at 2.5 was a little surprising to me. How did you guys feel about J.J. going that early above some of the other quarterbacks?
I personally thought it was a little bit early as well. I mean, we just don't know what he is. And there was guys that we have info on. So I personally wouldn't have done that. And I like J.J. McCarthy. I was probably one of the highest probably on him. Obviously we don't know what the heck it's going to be. Like Rich said, he is in a great system with a great head coach that knows how to develop quarterbacks. So I still think McCarthy is going to be a good player. It's not a bad pick in that respect. I just think there's guys that are playing ball that we have info on, and McCarthy's a bit of an unknown.
And the fact that they took Joe Burrow as his second quarterback, I think it's a reach, and it could turn into a not good pick, obviously. But any of these picks could, they can go sour real quick and it go south. But I think we kind of talked about JJ before. Like, just you feel like if you have JJ McCarthy right now, you feel pretty good about the situation. I mean, the Vikings are sitting there at 12-2 with Sam Darnold at quarterback, right? Like it's in Sam Darnold
13-2 now.
Yeah, 13-2.
13-2. Kevin O'Connell really turning around. So obviously that's his thought process. There's no trades in this draft. If that's the pick you want to go, the smart move would be just to move out of that pick and probably move back
down
towards
around
closer to like 212, because somebody's going to want Caleb Williams, Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, something on those lines. So there will be some biters, and you just pick up anything. Like you might even get like, hey, give me your 2027 first, and I'll go down to, like 212, something on those lines to get that player. A little bit of a reach, but sometimes it's kind of hard to say when there's no trades involved. What I will say is, if there's a guy, like Matt said, when you're in that weird spot, when you're picking around 1-6, 1-7 in the middle, it's like sometimes you have to end up what looks like a reach to get your guys. And the big thing for me in a dynasty startup is you can't be worried about what others are going to think about your draft pick. Like, oh, you took them 8 spots too high or 9 spots too high, because if you don't, you're not going to get them. Right? Like you're going to miss out on the opportunity. And if you believe in JJ McCarthy, right? Like you really believe, like say the way, like years I've gone, like I believed in Devon Achane last year, right? Like people like, oh wow, you took Devon Achane pretty high when, not Dalvin Cook, but somebody else is on the board here. And you're like, yeah, well, that's my guy. And I don't think he's going to be there to get back.
Sure. Jonathan Taylor would have been.
Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, exactly. Like when Jonathan Taylor's still on the board. Well, today, you're like, wow, that's really good. That's pretty good value where you would have taken him then. Like say it was the 4th round or so. Like, oh, that's pretty good value. So it could go either way. It could be fair value, but it's any pick at any time. So don't be afraid in the startup to go get your guy. Definitely when you're stuck in the middle there, because I would rather grab him 8 spots too early than miss out completely. Right? Like, would you rather, same thing with Brock Bowers at 1-6. Would you rather have Brock Bowers or not take him because ADP? Again, what does ADP stand for? Average draft position, right? Like this is all averaged out. Like you're not here to appease Twitter. You're not here to appease your friends. Like you're here to build the best dynasty cornerstone franchise in your eyes from all the work that you put in, and you get those guys. Because your rankings, just like ours, our rankings are going to be different than each other's, right? Like where I have player X, where I have Baker Mayfield, is going to be drastically different than other players, right? Like where I have Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors is going to be different from other players. So yeah, it's a little bit of a reach, but again, you're getting a good young quarterback with a very high upside and a good system that you see can work with already talents that have not worked in Nick Mullins and Sam Darnold at a high level, right? Like Sam Darnold just beat me in 2 playoff games too. Like,
wild.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Kevin O'Connell, coach of the year. So don't be afraid to get those guys. So went JJ McCarthy, went Malik Neighbors. Obviously, JJ is the biggest surprise here. You say Justin Jefferson going that late, but then Matt, you're on the clock. You took Brock Bowers at 1.6.
So here at 2.7.
How do you pivot from there?
Here at 2.7, I feel internal pressure to go with the quarterback here. That being said, if Malik Neighbors or Jahmyr Gibbs was there, I was giving strong consideration to those guys. And like I mentioned, when you're sitting there at 6, I feel like you're kind of getting sniped from both sides a lot. And those two in particular, Gibbs and Neighbors, I felt like I kind of got sniped a bit on. That being said, I'm still pretty happy that I ended up getting Caleb Williams here at 2.7, because I do feel like he's on the right path, right? I mean, there was some times where he looked kind of lost at the beginning of the season. And, obviously he's lost his head coach. He lost his original offensive coordinator. Now he's on a different offensive coordinator. Now that offensive coordinator is elevated to being the interim head coach. So there's a lot going on there, but he does seem to have cleaned some stuff up. He's not making mistakes. He's over 300 passes.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, he's over 300 passes without an interception. Whatever number he's at is the rookie record. I know he set that this past weekend. So he's really starting to, I think, turn a corner. There's rumors Ben Johnson might be attracted to this job. Who knows? There's people out there floating out the idea that they need to trade for Kyle Shanahan out there in San Francisco and bring him over. So I do think whatever his situation is next year, it's going to be better than it was this year. Regardless, just because he's not going to be going through all that turmoil. It's not going to be his first year in the league. So I think he's heading in the right direction. So I feel pretty good about getting Brock Bowers and Caleb Williams as kind of very cornerstone, very young, obviously both of them in their rookie season, guys. And my experiment's starting to feel a little bit better after just 2 picks, going Brock Bowers first and being able to get Caleb Williams second.
Yeah, it's a good feeling to have, because you're right. After a change pivots from there, like if you got CJ Stroud, you just don't feel quite as good as you do if you had Caleb Williams.
And he was there on the board. CJ Stroud was on the board, and I'm grappling with myself. Do I go with this guy I feel like is pretty safe and is going to be for sure, top, he's going to be a QB1. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 5 guy, but I feel like he's going to be a bottom half of the QB1 guy for his entire career at least. Or do I go with Caleb Williams, who has a little bit more rushing upside, already has over 400 yards rushing in his rookie season, and kind of, just has the it factor type of guy. So I went with Caleb just with upside in mind.
Careful when you say bottom around Garrett. He gets a little excited over there, a little close to Christmas. So watch that candy cane, Garrett. Watch that candy cane. So what's interesting here too, guys, is what's kind of like good stable tone as we end the 2024 season is here we are at 2.7. We have 6 rookies from the 2024 class already off the board.
Wow.
What a class. Like if you could say one thing about this 2024 season, there's a lot that's gone right. Saquon with a chance here to break the all-time rushing record. The biggest exclamation point on the season is how dynamic, how excited this 2024 class has been. And even though there's 6 off the board, there's probably another 5 that I really, really want to get my hands on here and grab. And there's a couple guys that I end up passing up on, and I'm like, man, maybe I should have reached for that guys. And like one of those guys we'll talk about when we get to him. I'll just wait actually till we get to him, because it's like he's one guy I don't have any shares of, and boy do I want some. So you take Caleb Williams here at 2.7. At 2.8 it goes CJ Stroud, then it goes Puka Nacua, then it goes Trey McBride, and then I'm on the board clock here at 2.11. And this is where I got to a point in the draft class where I go, oh, you know what? I wish I was back. I got Jayden Daniels, but man, I wish I was at 111 because right now I'm this tier of like, I can go 1,000 different ways and kind of satisfy and scratch this itch. And I said, Matt, you were gone. I didn't know this was a third round reversal.
Yeah, I heard that part. Yep.
Draft. So if I would have known that, I would have taken Devon Achane here, just to be clear. I would have taken Devon Achane if I known, because Breece Hall and Devon Achane were on the board. And my thought process was like, I had him queued up and I was like, there's no way the guy right in front of me at 1-1 is going to go running back. Like nobody does that. He needs a receiver. Like he's for sure going to take, Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr., one of those guys. Like I'll get one of those guys. So I'm like, all right, looking at those guys, I was like, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas, like those kind of guys. I was like, okay, who do I go from? And I was really just, I nailed it down to Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. And right now, the way Kyler Murray has played this season kind of soured me just a little bit on Marvin Harrison Jr. And again, living in a moment, right? We talk about the ebbs and flows of Dynasty and how it could change daily. The fact that Garrett Wilson now over this past week is kind of trying to talk his way out of New York gets me kind of excited as well. So I'm
back, baby.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, he's super talented. Like, I don't know his quarterback of the future. And he's like talking himself like out of New York. Like this would go really well for a really talented receiver. So I kind of flipped a coin in my head and I took Garrett Wilson Jr., thinking I was for sure going to get H. or Breece Hall on the way back, but Garrett duped me, but now explained the rules of this startup. So I took Garrett Wilson, and then the very next pick, where'd it go? It went Marvin Harrison Jr. And then after Marvin Harrison Jr., it went all the way back to the third round reversal. And I'm like, oh, it's third round reversal. Boy, did I just really, not only did I miss out on the running back I wanted, but I'm going to miss out on both those running backs that I wanted. Like just not even an option. So it goes all the way back to 3-1. And the guy who took Justin Jefferson and then CeeDee Lamb didn't go quarterback still. He took Devon Achane. So like, what a start for him, right? Like Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane. Like what a good cornerstone. Like I'll figure out quarterback later. This is going to be something I can figure out. They might be a little bit older. They're not going to be elite, but man, does nobody not have a receiving core and running back core like I do. So when Devon Achane at 3-1, Nico Collins at 3-2, and then Garrett, you can take it here. I'll wait till it gets back to me. I'll be quiet here. You're on the clock.
Yeah, so at 3-3, there were quite a few players that were going through my head as to who I wanted to take. Did I want to double up at quarterback? I felt like kind of at this point after CJ Stroud, there was kind of a big tier where I felt pretty similar about a lot of the quarterbacks. So I decided not to go quarterback there. The funny thing is the main guy that I was debating was actually the one that fell all the way to 311 to you, Rich. There were two players I was debating here. And I ended up sticking with my guns and knowing that right after this player, there is a huge fall off in tier as far as young running backs go. So I doubled up at running back. Two of my first three picks ended up being running back. I took Breece Hall. Now, for what it's worth, if there was a world where we were also picking this coming year's rookies, I would be taking Ashton Jeanty probably above Breece Hall here. So for what it's worth, now my guess is Ashton Jeanty wouldn't even make it here. He'd probably go somewhere in the second. But for what it's worth, like that's the range where I have him in right now. I think the only guys that I would have above Jeanty would be Bijan, Gibbs, and Achane. I think I have Jeanty right above Breece Hall. So it would be right in this range. But that being said, Breece Hall, even in a year where it's been awful. I mean, it's been awful for the Jets. He still put up pretty good numbers, averaging 15.5 points per game. So even in a down year to still average 15.5 points, like I feel pretty good about that. You're getting a very good, solid, like this year he's like a low end RB2 to high end RB1 type of guy. But most years he's going to be closer to that 17, 18 points per game. And I feel really good about that. So I like getting that insulation of really after this, there's a couple big name guys that are older that you can have for a year or two. But I feel like I'm the only one that has this position insulated for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, Garrett, I didn't like this pick.
Okay.
I liked the player. I didn't like the pick, right? And that's what it comes down to. And my fear is like making that pick that you did, which again, your running back room, clearly the best as the best so far. But like my fear of what could happen by going that route kind of ended up happening with your team, right? Because like the way I personally, for me, would have loved to grab Jackson Smith and Jigba, Brian Thomas Jr., or Drake London here. Because that gives you the young running back, the young quarterback, and that young receiver for a good cornerstone. Because my fear would be is like, man, I'm going to miss out. My receiving core is going to struggle. And now I have two like most easily replaceable positions, right? Like I understand the concept, and and I know you pivoted that way, so I understand it, and you've had a lot of success. That's why you're at the Playboy Mansion under the mistletoe. But for me, like I'd had the FOMO of just like, you're right. There's a big drop off at running back, but my fear is by the time I got back to me, I'd had that big drop off at the young receiver too, and I'm not getting one of those guys. And one thing I don't want to do after the 3 rounds, like a startup for the most part, is like I don't want to miss out on that young stud receiver. Like I want one of those guys, right? Like I need one of those guys. And Jackson Smith and Jigba at 22 years old, what he's done this year, I mean, he's taken a big step. He's taken a huge step. Second half of yesterday's game. Did you guys see his game yesterday?
Some parts, yeah.
Damn, did he look dynamic? He looked. It's like he's getting better every single week. So him, Drake London now paired with Michael Penix. He's really looked really good this year. And then Brian Thomas, another really high upside rookie who's looked, again, fantastic. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, you get 2 years of him looking really good. So the only reason I don't love it, like, again, I love the player, I don't love the pick, is like, I would have feared that I was going to miss out on getting one of those guys. And then looking at how your team, we'll see how it all plays out. I kind of feel like my personal fears, you might be really happy with it, when it came to fruition. Like now I'm constantly trying to catch up and trying to find that guy. So
I get you. I ended up being fairly happy with my wide receiver core. I knew it wasn't going to be elite, but assuming that all the other positions play out like I think they would, it would be one of those scenarios like, okay, I'm going to trade a late first for Terry McLaurin. I'm going to trade a late first for, some older receiver to kind of help hold things down.
Yeah. And listen, and that makes a lot of sense too. Like there's a lot of ways, like you said, we did a show a couple years ago. You're like, listen, man, I like going to my startup drafts and taking the best player available. And then when I find holes, like I'll figure that out later. Right. And you're right. And the best way to figure that out is like in season, start trading your first away. That's the best way to do it. So you take the best player available and you're like, oh man, receiver, I end up being short at receiver. Well, yeah, I can go get Terry McLaurin, who's coming off a career year for just a first, right? Like a later first. And that's why, like, I love, like, one of the key things I love to do in a startup draft, specifically a startup draft. And obviously, if you know me, I do it all the time. I don't like to leave a startup draft with my first that following year because the startup draft is kind of like a redraft somewhat, right? And the way I look at it is like, if I give up my first, I can get in the middle rounds here, like right around 6, 7, I'm getting one more player like in that like good tier that nobody else has. So it increases my odds of being a playoff team tremendously. Right? Like, cause I'm adding that one extra player. So now I feel like that first I gave up is almost like a late first anyways. Like, so like, there you go. So I love to move that move. And obviously with no trades, we don't know how that'll play out. And you're a big trader in the startup drafts anyways.
For sure.
Kurt. So
I'm moving all over the place.
Yeah. So I understand the player. I understand the guy. Just
you were just like the young receiver instead.
And it's just me spit on your mistletoe. Why do you get all the kisses?
All right.
And who went right after you, Garrett? Who went right after you?
Jackson Smith and Jigba right after me. He's been crazy hot. Saquon Barkley here at 3.5.
Oh, you were talking about me. Sorry.
Well, I was subtly.
Thank you so
much. Sam Laporta goes at 3.6. I was a little surprised to see Laporta go there. To me at this point, we've got like the big tier of Bowers by himself and then McBride by himself. And then kind of everybody else. But if you want to be the first, I get it. And then Matt, you were next up, my guy, at 3.7.
Yeah, so at 3.7, I'm looking at all the young wide receivers. I also like to get wide receivers. But there's like a little in the back of my mind, there's always in a super flex, I have to feel comfy at my second quarterback. I need to, like, I feel anxiety if I don't have my second quarterback. So that's a little something. And with going Bowers early, I felt like I need to get another guy that's going to be a QB1. And Brock Bowers hasn't had the best year of his career, but he is still sitting there at QB12.
Brock Purdy.
What did I say? I'm sorry.
Bowers.
Oh,
You got
my
two
bad.
Brocks.
Yeah, I'm getting all confused with my Brocks. Broccoli, Brock Purdy, they're all tops of my list.
Brock from Pokemon.
I don't know that one. Sorry, I'm a little too old for Pokemon. Yeah,
The leader of the first gym. Come on.
I don't. Sorry.
Anyway,
we're old.
But anyway, moving on. Brock Purdy was who I was talking about, and he's a QB1, and he makes me feel good and cozy. My anxiety is now gone. And I'm looking at, Brian Thomas was a guy that was really high on my list. I'm looking at London. Higgins is out there. I feel pretty good about a lot of these guys. And maybe one of them is going to come back to me, and I'll just pick them with my next pick. No big deal, right? We'll see.
Question mark?
Question mark. So after me,
we'll see on tomorrow's show where you erred.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. So after me, it goes AJ Brown, which great pick, great player. He's getting a little bit old, but still third round, I feel like is pretty good value there. Then it was Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, and then Rich. You were back on the board there.
Yeah, and you're right about the AJ Brown. Like AJ Brown's kind of fallen that matic. Like AJ Brown to me, the draft him at this point, a startup draft, fair value where he went in the third round, but like it'd have to be screaming value because at that point, like
it's Tyreek Hill from like 2 or 3 years ago, right? I mean, like
yeah,
or like last year or 2 years ago. Like it's good value. It's not a bad pick. He's going to get you a lot of points, and he's going to be there for 2 or 3 years. He's just not a long term asset that you want to be taking super high in startups anymore, unless you're going for like a win now team, I feel like. So it really depends on your strategy.
And for my strategy in a dynasty startup, I have there's not many rules I have, but one rule I have is in the first 3 rounds, the words 2 to 3 years left cannot be in that vocabulary, right? Like my first 3 picks have got to be in what I believe cornerstone players. Like this is something like I can go through multiple rookie drafts and not have to worry about this position. So I'd already taken Garrett Wilson. I have Jayden Daniels. I'm going to clock here again. And I'm with you guys. Like there's no other quarterback that I really loved here. I really did think, possibly I really thought I can get Trevor Lawrence coming back to me. And I was going to get Trevor Lawrence. I was like the odds of, the 1-1, he already has Josh Allen. Maybe he'll take him. If not, no big deal. Cause I had a plan that I kind of executed later for quarterback if I miss out on Trevor Lawrence. And even if I didn't want Trevor Lawrence, there's a couple guys I thought I may be able to get later, and I actually got both of them. Anyway, so I'm on the board here, and I was really torn between Brian Thomas and Drake London. And my biggest thing was, if this was a real draft, is I have no Brian Thomas shares whatsoever at all. And boy, do I want him, because he looks so good.
Great.
Brian Thomas is 22, but what came down to is, okay, who's got the better track record so far? And to me, it's Drake London, who's only 23 years old, who's got, in my opinion, somebody who has a really good high upside quarterback as well, and Michael Penix, and he actually did show out as well and looked fantastic in his first NFL start. So I ended up taking Drake London here at 311 to pair with my Garrett Wilson. And again, I really love to get those young, I'm still in that mode of getting those young receivers that I could build around, because I still believe in that very fluid running back position where I can go out and get those guys. I could trade for the older guys. I could draft them and plug them right away. Like I could have drafted this year and got Tyrone Tracy and Bucky Irvin and been a legit contender with those cornerstone players. And it's the easiest position in my eyes to fill for middle of the road points, where those young receivers, no matter what, they're going to cost you, and they're going to cost you a family member, a beloved pet, not a fish. It's not a fish. So those are Terry McLaurin's. So I took Drake London over Brian Thomas. And then the very, very next pick was Brian Thomas. Cause I was like, maybe Brian Thomas will come back to me. You know what I mean? Sure enough, he went. So that's the first 3 rounds. That's all we're going to do in this episode, is the first 3 rounds of our startup draft. Ooh. Tune in tomorrow where we cover multiple other rounds and kind of talk about strategies and how our teams develop and where Matt went wrong or Garrett went wrong, and how I went tremendously right. So that'll be here tomorrow. Right. We'll pick up with 4-1. Right now I'm sitting here with Jayden Daniels, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. Matt is sitting there with Brock Bowers, Caleb Williams, and Brock Purdy. And Matt, Garrett, you're sitting there, Bijan Robinson, Drake Maye, and Breece Hall. So we have 3 very different cores and cornerstones sitting here. So how's it all going to play out? Tune in tomorrow with our last episode of the 2024 season. But like I said, before we go, let's give away some merch.
Let's do it,
shall we?
Do it.
So let me go through here with the rating reviews. We're going to do this again. If you leave a rating review on the app or the podcast for these next couple of weeks, we're giving away some merch from the merch store you're choosing. All you got to do is if you hear your name, hit me up on Twitter at Dynasty Rich, or you can email me, rich@dynastynerds.com. So this week's winner, don't I get Garrett excited again? So for the merch from the podcast review is coming from December 5th review, comes from Jimbo Slice 4545.
Nice.
Jimbo Slice 4545. Hit me up. We got some good merch from you. The best merch. You know, you get the Dynasty Nerds logo going across your chest and getting so close to your nips and most importantly your heart. Man, what a merry season that brings along. So let me look up the Dynasty Nerds. I got to go in here. I'm not prepared. I'm a very ill-prepared guy. I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy.
You're an asker, not a doer. We all know it.
That's what I literally. If I ever don't get cremated and I have a tombstone, I just want to say Rich Dotson, born October 9th, 1979, died October 11th, 2179. Very long life. He was an asker, not a doer.
Not a doer.
That makes sense. So this one's going to come from the winner of the app review comes from L True, LTREU. Shout out to everybody that took the time to leave us a rating review. It really does help the podcast. It helps the app. If you don't have the app, we're talking about, you want to do your own mock draft right now? Download Dynasty GM app. It's free. Get in there and have some fun. What's great too is like as you get ready for your rookie drafts is once you sync your league, you can do your rookie drafts with all your picks already in there in the mock draft. Like you could, it's all synced in there. No app will get you more prepared for your rookie draft than the Dynasty GM. So you got to get out there and download it. It's absolutely free. But obviously, if you want to sync it with all your leagues and get all those extra perks, which are very perkalicious, and get it, of course, you get the Dynasty Nerds film room as well. All you got to do is buy the nerds a cup of coffee once a month.
Percolate that. Percolate it.
Not every day.
Yeah.
Once a month, percolate that bad boy.
Come on.
Get in there. A little double espresso on the nips. You know what I'm saying? So get in there, support the nerds, support the cause, and most importantly, support yourself, right? Like put yourself in position to be playing
like a
this
good bra.
Week. Yeah. If you're sitting there right now and you're looking at the guys who are about to be going into like a good bra.
I know that was a slick.
Support yourself.
Wow, that's good.
Slid in there.
I'm gonna put that in the memory bank. I gotta steal that one for sure. Yeah, put that in the Rich Dotson memory bank. That's so good. Yeah, if you're looking at everybody who's going to go into this following week playing for the championship, and you're like, man, what could I have done different? Like, what? Like, I am so jealous of those succulent players. What could I have done different? It's very simple. Join the Nerd Herd.
Join the Nerd.
That's it.
Yep.
Put yourself in the best position. So we'll be back with tomorrow's episode, last episode of the year. Shout out to everybody that's playing this week. Till then,
adios.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.